Picture this, a single private corporation pulling off a hostile takeover of an entire subcontinent. In today's Explainer, we're going to unpack exactly how a group of merchants morphed the British East India Company into a massive imperial power over a bloody 100-year span. It's an absolutely fascinating and frankly sobering look at how early corporate overreach laid the very foundation for the British colonization of India. We're looking at the century between 1757 and 1857, a time when basic trade privileges snowballed into total absolute domination. Here is the roadmap of the cause and effect chain we'll be tracing today. 1. The Plassey Conspiracy. 2. Total control after Buxar. 3. The permanent settlement. 4. Roots of the rebellion. And finally, 5. The 1857 revolt. All right, let's jump right into part 1, the Plassey Conspiracy. So things really start heating up in the 1750s. The East India Company was basically doing whatever it wanted, running illegal trade, building unauthorized forts, which deeply angered the new Nawab, Siraj-ud-Daulah. But the British didn't just meet him on the battlefield. Instead, they engineered a calculated, months-long conspiracy to install a puppet ruler. It's almost like a heist movie. The Fort George Council started scheming in October 1756. By April, the coup was officially greenlit, and by June 5th, they managed to get a key insider, Mir Jafar, to sign a secret agreement to betray the Nawab. The Battle of Plassey? That was just the staged final act. When June 23rd, 1757 rolls around, the battle begins. But get this, leading generals like Mir Jafar literally just stand there. They commit absolute treason by keeping 2/3 of the Nawab's army completely idle while the fighting raged. The Nawab's loyal commander, Mir Mardan, fought bravely, but was tragically killed by a cannonball around 3 p.m. That single death completely shattered the Nawab's resistance, and Mir Jafar essentially just handed the victory over to the British. You see, this wasn't really a military conquest at all. It was a pure political betrayal. As British soldier John Wood noted at the time, the kingdom was won without a general assault. It wasn't about superior British military tactics. No, it was a triumph of corporate bribery, subversion, and treachery. And with this hollow victory, the colonization of India was officially off and running. Following Plassey, the corporate theft just exploded. The British corporation totally monopolized all trade and commerce. They installed Mir Jafar as their puppet Nawab and immediately started draining immense wealth from the region. It is honestly staggering how fast it all happened. Bengal went from being this incredibly prosperous, wealthy Mughal province to a land completely devastated by hunger, famine, and deprivation in almost no time at all. Which brings us to part 2, total control after Buxar. Naturally, the company's insatiable greed sparked another massive conflict, the Battle of Buxar in 1764, right when the new Nawab tried to push back against the corruption and make Bengal independent again. Well, the British defeated him, and Robert Clive set up this highly cynical dual government system. The company took the Diwani, meaning they had the right to collect all the taxes and hold all the money. Meanwhile, they stuck the Nawab with the Nizamat, meaning he had all the headaches of actual administration and keeping the peace, but with literally zero financial authority to do it. They gave themselves all the power and cash and saddled the Nawab with all the blame. Yeah, so unsurprisingly, this bizarre division of labor failed spectacularly. It caused such extreme economic hardship, rampant corruption, and total administrative breakdown that Governor-General Warren Hastings had to scrap the entire dual government system just a few years later in 1772. The company had broken Bengal's economy so badly, they had no choice but to step in and take direct control. Let's move on to part 3, the permanent settlement. Now that they had direct control, the British needed a predictable, steady flow of cash. So they cooked up a strict new system. They made local zamindars the absolute owners of the land and permanently fixed the revenue that was owed to the company. To meet these insanely steep demands, the zamindars turned around and enforced incredibly high rents on the peasant farmers. And it gets worse. Under the ruthless sunset law, if a zamindar didn't pay the British before the sun went down on their due date, their land was auctioned off. Talk about a brutal trickle-down economy, right? The company squeezed the zamindars, and the zamindars just crushed the peasants to survive. Instead of creating a stable, flourishing agricultural sector, this legalized land grab was an absolute disaster for the working class. There was zero investment in actually improving the land, and zamindars just kept piling illegal taxes and cesses on the peasants. It created a massive pressure cooker of unrest that triggered uprisings like the Indigo Revolt. This tension would simmer for over a century, only seeing some partial reforms in the late 1800s before finally being abolished for good in 1950. That sets the stage perfectly for Part 4, Roots of the Rebellion. By the mid-1800s, the company had completely disrupted the economy, the culture, and the political landscape. They had managed to alienate pretty much everyone at the exact same time. Now, the immediate spark for the rebellion was the famous rumor that the new Enfield rifle cartridges were greased with cow and pig fat, which deeply violated the soldiers' religious beliefs. But beneath that surface tension, you had aggressive missionaries causing widespread fear of forced conversions, social reforms that terrified conservative sections of society, exploitative land taxes bankrupting the peasants, and new laws forcing local soldiers to deploy overseas. It was a perfect storm. And if angering the soldiers, the peasants, and the religious conservatives wasn't enough, they also went straight after the royalty. Governor General Lord Dalhousie devised something called the Doctrine of Lapse. Basically, this was a sweeping, incredibly arrogant policy that meant if a king died without a male heir, boom, the British would just step in and annex the kingdom. Powerful, ancient states like Jhansi, Nagpur, and Awadh were simply swallowed up by the company, stripping royalty of their thrones on a complete technicality. Which all boils over in our final section, Part 5, the 1857 Revolt. All of this friction, the economic drain, the religious insults, the political land grabs, finally snapped on March 29, 1857, when a soldier named Mangal Pandey led a mutiny at Barakpur. It instantly transformed decades of layered grievances into a full-fledged war to drive the British out of India entirely. And this wasn't some small, localized event. The massive scale and chaos were totally unprecedented. The rebellion ripped through India like wildfire, from Meerut in Delhi all the way to Chittagong and Dhaka. Armories were burned to the ground, violent clashes broke out everywhere, and the East India Company was forced to scramble naval brigades and European volunteers just to avoid being completely overrun. But here's a really tragic historical twist that ultimately helped the British survive. The revolt actually exposed a massive, deep fracture in Indian society. The landed aristocracy, those same zamindars who benefited from the company's earlier land settlements, actively opposed the rebellion. They actually supplied elephants, carriages, and intelligence to help the British hunt down fleeing sepoys in exchange for fancy titles and wealth. Meanwhile, the middle class supported the company, and the heavily burdened common peasants largely remained indifferent to the fight. The rebellion was eventually crushed, but it did mark the end of the East India Company, forcing the British Crown to step in and cement formal colonial rule. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought. How did a single trading company's ruthless pursuit of quarterly profits inadvertently forge the destiny of an entire subcontinent? Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.